Hi guys, my name is Mayana and today I'm going to be doing my April wrap up. So in April I only read 14 books, and before y'all get in the comments and be like, oh my gosh, only like 14 is still a lot. I know that, but my typical like reading is like 25, 30. So like for me it wasn't a lot. So like for me this is like a reading slump. And like I don't mind it though, because I spent a lot of time like watching TV and movies. I love consuming media in all forms, so it was really nice just taking the month of April and consuming movies. So yeah, let's just get into what I read this month. So at the end of March I ended up starting Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire. So I ended off March with Game of Thrones, and then instead of starting off April with it, I decided to read a different book called Floating Hotel. This is a sci-fi novel about a hotel in space, and I ended up giving this one 3 out of 5 stars. I thought it was just fine. This was like a cozy sci-fi book. It's just stories about this hotel that's in space and about this guy who's like enamored by it, and he ends up running it, and it's just like little fun stories in there. But like it's more of like a cozy sci-fi, and sci-fi is like my favorite genre right now. So I thought that even though I don't like cozy fantasy, that I would enjoy cozy sci-fi because I'm loving sci-fi more. I'm just not a cozy girl, because to me cozy just translates to no plot. Like, and I need a plot. Like, I'm sorry, I wish I was a person who didn't need a plot. I wish I could be a cozy enjoyer, but I'm just not, and it's unfortunate, but what else am I gonna do about it? Sitting away. So then I read A Song of Ice and Fire. So I read in April I read A Clash of Knights, A Storm of Swords, A Feast for Crows, and A Dance of Dragons. But I read it like I read other things in between it, which I actually like that I did that. So for Game of Thrones I had a lot of fun. Every book got 4 stars except for A Storm of Crows. A Storm of Crows was my favorite. I ended up giving that one 5 stars. But other than that, I had a lot of fun reading these. I really love these characters. I love the world. I love the way that George R.R. Martin writes women. I love the things that happens in these books. Like, it's just so different. Like, you have like dragons and magic, and I love like reading about like the Targaryens and their history, and the Starks and their history, and it was just so much going on and so many characters, and it's so different from like the show, which like, I kind of wasn't expecting. Like so as someone who didn't know anything about the show before going into it, like I thought it was going to be like an exact copy, but it actually like wasn't. Honestly, A Storm of Crows is where like it delves off into like something totally different, and like I actually kind of hate that they took out a lot of like the plot lines that happen in A Song of Ice and Fire. Like, there's a lot of cool plot lines in there, or a lot of cool plot lines that were like kind of drawn out in the books that like I wish were drawn out in the show, but they weren't. So, and there are characters that like I didn't really care for in the show that I loved in the book. Like Jon Snow, like I didn't really care for him in the show, but in the books I love him. Like, he's such a different character. He's a lot more political and smart and just more entertaining to like have a point of view of. And there are characters in the show that I liked that like I didn't care for in the books, like Bran. Like, his chapters, like in the show I love like his scenes. A lot of people found them boring, but like in the book I found his chapters like very boring. So I just can't wait to see like how that ends. And then I also listened to A Telltale Heart. This is a reread for me. I listened to Matthew Gray Gubler read it. It's like 15 minutes. It was like I was like listening to it randomly at like 6 a.m. because I was trying to go back to bed. So I was like, let me listen to this, because Matthew Gray Gubler's voice is just like so like smoothing, and like it just felt good. Like, it just, I don't know, I loved listening to it. I didn't end up going back to sleep, but it was a very fun reread. And then I also reread this book, The Rise of the Dragons, and I ended up reading this last month, and I reread it to annotate it. So I love this book. I gave it 5 stars, and the reread was just as fun, especially like was so close to it. So I basically, and if you want to know more about my annotations, I could tell you if you want to know, because I just feel like nobody would care. But I love this. I love that I had the book, because I annotated it because I finally got the book, and so I love that I had the book. I might reread Fire and Blood too, because I got the book for that as well finally. And there's just some pictures in here that I love, some like characters in here that I love. It introduced me to like so many Targaryens that aren't even mentioned in like House of the Dragon, which I'm so excited for in June. And then I also reread The Sword Storm, which is a second book, which is like the second short story in like the 7 Knights of the Kingdom. And I reread this one because there were some particular Targaryens that were mentioned in this that I love, like Shira Seastar, I love her, and Blood Raven, I love Blood Raven. So it was like some Targaryens that like I was interested in like learning more history about them, and because they aren't mentioned in the Rise of the Dragon. So I reread this story with like, I don't know, it was fun reading it, like knowing what they were talking about, I guess. And then I read 1984 because this has an audiobook on Amazon, and it was really fun listening to this because Andrew Garfield narrates it, and then there's another guy and Tom Hardy who narrated, and it was just like very fun. And I just like listened to this while I was baking and like washing the dishes and stuff like that, and I just had a really good time. I ended up giving it 3 stars though, because it wasn't like amazing or like life-changing. It was just like a typical classic, I guess, but it was still really fun at the same time. I also read The World of Ice and Fire, which is more about the world of Ice and Fire. So this has even more Targaryen history that isn't mentioned in the Rise of the Dragon, because the Rise of the Dragon and Fire and Blood are just one half. Like it's supposed to be 2 volumes, so that's one half. So I wanted to know like the full, I guess like the full scope of the story, but without all the details. So that's why I read this one. I also want to know more about like the Starks, because they're also a favorite family of mine. And so I just read this one. It was also just fun. This wasn't as fun as like the Rise of the Dragon, but it was still fun nonetheless. And like I love that this one like literally looks like a history book. Because this one doesn't necessarily like look like a history book. Like it just looks like it, I guess it attempts to, but like not really. Whereas with this, I feel like the just pages, like it just looks more like a history book to me personally. I don't know. And then I read some Bridgerton books. So I did a Bridgerton reading vlog if you're interested in that. So I read On the Way to the Wedding, It's in His Kiss, and When He Was Wicked. And I read these like all out of order. So On the Way to the Wedding I gave 4 stars. It's in His Kiss I gave 3 stars. And When He Was Wicked I gave 4 stars. So On the Way to the Wedding is Gregory's story. I loved it. Gregory's fucking insane, and I loved it. He literally like kidnaps his love interest and like feeds her a sandwich before her wedding because she's marrying somebody else. And it was just like, it was just so fun because it was like he was in love with her because he was in love with her friend, she was in love with him, and her friend was in love with somebody else. And it was just like messy and fun. And I was reading Funny Story at the time, which I'll talk about later. I was reading Funny Story at the time, and so it was just like very like, I don't know, just fun. I love mess, and it was just fun. Like It's in His Kiss I thought I was gonna like more. This was Hyacinth's story. I didn't really care too much about it. Like it was just fine. It wasn't as fun as On the Way to the Wedding, like, you know, so I thought this was like fine. And then When He Was Wicked I gave 4 stars. I had a lot of fun with it. This was Francesca's story. I also thought this was fun because this was like her being chased by her dead husband's cousin. It was just messy. I love a good, like, I love historical romances when they're messy and like when they just have just some like fun stuff going around, and that's literally what this was. So I loved it. And then lastly I read Funny Story, which I ended up giving 5 out of 5 stars. This is my favorite Emily Henry. I do have a vlog of me reading Funny Story if you're interested in watching it, and then I am going to be uploading a Emily Henry ranking video coming up in May. It's already filmed, edited, and up, set date, everything. So yeah, just be on the lookout for that. But Funny Story, I loved it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. This one is about Daphne, who her fiance just left her for his best friend. So Daphne ends up moving into the best friend's ex-boyfriend's apartment, and then they end up getting invited to like their wedding, and they end up like in this like weird fake dating situation where it's like they're fake dating but not really. And like it's kind of like people, it's like a rumor that starts going around that they're dating, and then like Miles, the love interest, doesn't really correct her. And if you like New Girl, read this. If you are obsessed with Nick Miller, like, read this, because Miles is literally Nick Miller. So funny. He's a little bit of a loser, and the humor in this book was just so fun. Like, it definitely was something I understood. Like, it was definitely like sitcom humor, and I don't mean that in a negative way, because I love sitcoms. I think they're very fun, and it was just very funny, and I loved it. So yeah, that's all that I read for April. I had a lot of fun. I just watched a lot of movies, watched a lot of TV shows. If you want to see like a media wrap up, please let me know. I probably do one on TikTok, and it'll probably be a slideshow. So follow me on TikTok at Hannah's Library if you are interested in seeing like a media wrap up. Or I'll probably like post one on like my Instagram stories or my Instagram. I think I'll post one on my Instagram. So also my Hannah's Library if you're interested in that. But yeah, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.